favorite drinking buddy. Let's get some mead.
So Bethesda just released the 10th anniversary edition of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Say what you will about their repeated releases and re-releases of the same decade-old game, and the somewhat scattered and microtransaction-y rollout of the Creation Club, but this one is the biggest release yet, and I'm excited to experience new quests, items, and gameplay mechanics with improved performance and graphics. Skyrim has easily been the game I have sunk the greatest amount of time into. It is easy to get lost in the world with all of the characters, cities, landscapes, dungeons, and quests available. At this point, I enjoy just walking around and doing the more mindless tasks that you typically rush past while questing. So, as lame as it sounds, I'm excited to lose track of time with the new fishing mechanic. I don't even fish in real life, but I'm gonna fish in Skyrim some. I mean, I even named my dog after the goddess of love, Mara. Yes, that's you. Hi. Oh, yes. Oh. Would you like to say something? Would you like to say something? You got anything to tell anybody? You camera shy? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. While I would prefer it if Bethesda came out with the Elder Scrolls 6 instead, I'm excited to have an excuse to start a new playthrough. If you've ever played Skyrim, you know how iconic that opening scene is.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Beyond that iconic first line, though, there's another line that has always stood out to me in that cutscene. As you approach the city of Helgen and your impending execution, Ralof reminisces on times past and says,
"This is Helgen. I used to be sweet on a girl from here. Wonder if VILOD is still making that mead with juniper berries mixed in."
You actually see VILOD briefly in that intro as you ride by. He's the one that says,
"Justice!"
after the first Stormcloak is beheaded. Spoilers for a literal decade-old game, but VILOD doesn't survive the dragon attack on the city and can't give us his famous mead recipe. However, you can return to Helgen after some time and find a few bottles of his mead in the wreckage of the inn. Of all the meads in Skyrim, I found VILOD'S mead the most intriguing because they actually reference additional ingredients beyond honey, which give home mead makers a great jumping off point if they want to try to recreate it themselves. There is also an official Skyrim cookbook available that takes some further creative liberties with the recipe, adding yarrow and hibiscus to represent the red mountain flower native to Skyrim. In celebration of Skyrim's 10th anniversary release, I brewed VILOD'S mead. The official cookbook has a simple mead base recipe and then variants for a few of the different meads mentioned in-game. Their recipes are for a half-gallon carboy, but I only have a full-gallon one, so I doubled the measurements. However, my conversions were a little off with the honey, and I added a little too much. If you follow the recipe more strictly, you will likely end up with a slightly less sweet mead than I did. The recipe for VILOD'S Juniper Berry Mead opens with this. Though VILOD has joined his ancestors, his mead lives on in Helgen and beyond. Using the native juniper berry and red mountain flowers, he created a mead that truly embodies the spirit of Skyrim. The recipe itself calls for juniper berries, dried yarrow, and dried hibiscus flowers, on top of the normal mead ingredients: water, honey, and yeast. This isn't necessarily a how-to, but I do think you should pick up this cookbook. I ended up getting a little busy and going about a week over on the fermentation, but it didn't adversely affect the end beverage. My color was actually pretty spot on to the picture provided by the cookbook, so I'm proud of that. I would also like to compare it to another
Mead with juniper berries mixed in
that I had on hand, namely Bragi from Groennfell Meadery out of Vermont. So in my last video, I mentioned that the Juniper One would be making an appearance in my next video. I'll be using it as my palate cleanser. I know it's not a true reset button for my palate the way that traditional carbonated water would be, but I really want to focus on the juniper flavors here, and I think that VILOD would want that for us today. So I brewed this mead with the cheapest ingredients available to me, just so I could, give it a shot and see how it is. But Hoplark's recipe with the Juniper one and reading about it on their website kind of has me thinking that maybe next year I'll do this again, but try to see how I can upscale the whole quality of the beverage by using more fresh and local ingredients. So instead of, honey from Walmart and dried juniper berries from natural grocers, going with more of a fresh juniper berry and maybe even incorporating needles just to kind of round out that juniper note, because I think for me that is the focus of this beverage. I am trying to really dial in on that juniperiness. I know that the official cookbook, calls for some hibiscus flowers to kind of call back to the red mountain flower of Skyrim, but it was never mentioned in game that way. They focused on the juniper, so to me,
That's where my head is.
I want juniper to be the taste. So that's what we're focusing on. I was a little over on my honey on this one, so I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit
Sweeter.
that was just kind of due to a conversion error on my part. But yeah, my brew has honey, juniper berries, hibiscus, yarrow, and it called for ale yeast in the cookbook. All I had was champagne yeast on hand, so it might have a little bit higher of an alcohol percentage, but this was a super unscientific process, so I have no clue what the alcohol percentage is going to be on this. I would assume that it will approach the upper limit of what the champagne ale yeast is capable of. So I'm guessing it's around 14%. I think next time I will get with my brother-in-law, who's more of an avid home brewer, and try to, use some of his equipment to measure, percentages as we're going through things like hygrometers and, all of the stuff that home brewers use. But mead is like the easiest thing you can brew at home, so I didn't really feel and didn't really have the time to dedicate to actually measuring out my alcohol by weight, but I think we're gonna be okay. So just in terms of comparison, the color on this one is a little bit lighter. It's more of like a Jolly Rancher, like watermelon Jolly Rancher pink. It's pretty hazy, which I would attribute to the yeast and the youngness of the brew. So on the nose, it's very clean, which I attribute to the juniper. It does smell sweet, like honey sweet, but it still has that meaty, funky yeast presence, especially more apparent in younger meads. And I can pick up on a slight earthiness from the yarrow. Let's see how it tastes. So the palate, it is very sweet up front. It's earthy. It's got a clean herbaceousness and a moderate bitterness, both of which I attribute to the juniper. And then a delicate hibiscus florality, like obviously juniper is still pretty floral, but the juniper is front loaded and then the hibiscus and yarrow are kind of back loaded. The mouthfeel is heavy, but not cloying, which is unique. And it still has some fizziness from fermentation. Not a lot, but just a little bit there. And then on the finish, the hibiscus dominates, but the juniper is still there. And then it follows it out. And then I think, the juniper is sort of the last thing I'm thinking about. But yeah, it's super good. I like having it. I like that I actually tried to make it and that I referenced the actual official cookbook. And I will be sipping that while I play Skyrim. Maybe I'll start streaming, who knows. Now we're gonna move on to the comparison. I bought this mead a while ago, which contributes to how clear it is in comparison. I have no idea what it looked like when I bought it because I opened it this week. I think I tend to like meads that have settled out and they're not so hazy, because I think, the yeast is less present, it's less sweet, and it's just a little bit cleaner and it tastes a little bit higher quality in my opinion. So that's more so how I prefer to enjoy my traditional mead styles. So that's why I didn't have a reason to open it, so I didn't, but I knew I wanted it and I knew they might sell out, so I figured I'd pick it up. But this is Bragi from Groennfell. They debuted these traditional mead styles last year, which I'm super pumped about. Their claim to fame is pushing the boundaries with mead more so than doing traditional stuff. They do canned, carbonated, lower ABV meads that are kind of closer to what you think of. If you don't know what mead is going in and know that it's like wine but made with honey instead of grapes, if you don't know that going in, the way they talk about mead in literature and in gaming and stuff like that, you kind of build this picture in your head that it's like a magical beer, and the way they talk about it, you know, it's like something you swig and like, you know, whatever. But so that I feel like their flagships, the canned carbonated lower ABVs, are more in line with that sort of fantasy idea of mead, which is really interesting to me. I like that idea. I think I actually have some down here. I'm not gonna compare these, but they have many different canned versions. I think I will probably do a flight of all of these because I have just about every canned version as well. I think there's a review of that somewhere in the pipeline, maybe around Christmas time if I have time and if it's something that you guys would like to see. So let me know if I should do that, and that's what we'll do. So their recipe differs fairly substantially from the VILOD mead, but the reason that we're comparing it is they use juniper, but the other ingredients include rose hips, elderflowers, and black currants. So it still kind of embodies that floral juniper red mead. I figured it was worth, you know, having something to compare to. So on the color, it's darker. It's kind of shying away from pink and closer to red, and it's a little bit clearer because it has been conditioning since, you know, whenever I bought it, however many months ago that was. So it's had a chance to settle out and clarify some. It's like candied apple and rich and pretty clean. I would again attribute that to the juniper. But on the palate, it's got a tart malic acidity. It's a lot drier. The currants are definitely present, and the elderflower florality is really delicate. It makes me want some Saint Germain's, so I can, you know, make some kind of cocktail with it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Maybe kind of taking inspiration from, you know, one of the many specialty beverages, like at the Bee and Barb in Riften. The mouthfeel is light, but it's also mildly fizzy, which kind of surprises me. Like, I can see why this would be fizzy because it's still undergoing some form of fermentation, but this one being fizzy is pretty cool to me. You know, some good bottle conditioning going on there. The finish is floral, fruity, and the tartness pretty quickly dissipates, which, you know, allows some of those richer, rounder fruit notes to sort of take over, and it's really nice. It's much fruitier than that one for sure. This one is more, you know, tropical flowers, and then this one is more tropical fruits. So in comparison, the Bragi is fruitier and less sweet, and my homebrewed VILOD mead is more floral and more sweet. The sweetness could be attributed to my conversion hiccup, but I still think it would have been sweeter. I don't think I was off by that much. If you can brew yourself, like you have a carboy or some other form of brewing equipment, and you really want to dial up that juniper florality, I would definitely consider checking out the Elder Scrolls Cookbook and grabbing the recipe from there. But if not, you can't go wrong with Groennfell's Bragi. Mead was one of the first alcoholic beverages I really explored in depth. It's a very approachable craft beverage, whether you're just dipping your toes in for the first time or you're a seasoned appreciator looking for new flavors to explore. I have the majority of Groennfell's meads on hand waiting to be reviewed, so there's definitely a video in the pipeline somewhere, but let me know if you'd be interested in watching that. I think I'll also have to brew the other meads featured in the Elder Scrolls Cookbook and give those a taste as well. In the meantime, I think I might do a few playthroughs of the new version of Skyrim that are focused on the new features. If you want to watch me try the new quests, go fishing, and drink mead in both the game and real life simultaneously, I just might start streaming some gameplay. No promises though. In memory of VILOD and his legendary homebrew, cheers my friends. Now go and enjoy some mead and get lost in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, the 10th Anniversary Edition, the musical, the series, the soundtrack, the definitive edition, unrated and uncut, plus bonus features. With fishing.
Welcome!
Always stood out to me in that cutscene.
Whoa, hey. It's okay.